You feel a sharp, cold ice pick prod the back of your neck, and you're forced to name the most luridly entertaining erotic thriller of the 80s and 90s. What movie do you go with?
I know it is, but sit down anyway so we can get it over with.
Dressed to Kill? Body Heat? Fatal Attraction? What about Wild Things or The Last Seduction? While all of those are worthy affairs, it's hard to beat Paul Verhoeven's controversial and transgressive neo-noir crime film, Basic Instinct.
And maybe you can get off once in a while.
Indeed, not only did Joe Estera's screenplay sell for a then unthinkable, record-setting $3 million, but the film also overcame its polemic response and public protests to septuple its budget and gross over $350 million worldwide. Featuring a sleek, seductive, ultra-sexy, star-making turn from Sharron Stone, who Verhoeven had to fight hard to cast as the ice-hot femme fatale Catherine Trammell,
I wasn't in the mood last night.
Basic Instinct hopped a slew of production hurdles en route to becoming the quintessential 90s erotic thriller. Between Stone's unscripted pantyless power play, the litany of actresses who passed on the part, Michael Douglas's diva-like demands, the shocking graphic sex and violence that required 14 editorial cuts to avoid an NC-17 rating, the undying creative differences between Verhoeven, Douglas, and Estera's, and a whole lot more. It's time to reach under the bed and find out what the happened to Basic Instinct almost 35 years ago.
I'd have to be pretty stupid to write a book about killing and then kill somebody the way I described it in my book.
After penning scripts for the successful 80s films Flashdance and Jagged Edge, Joe Estera drew partly on his Ohio upbringing when conceiving the story of Basic Instinct.
She likes me to watch.
For instance, Catherine Trammell was inspired by a go-go dancer who pulled a gun on Estera's in his youth. Similarly, Nick Curran was based on a thrill-seeking detective the writer knew in Ohio. As the highest-paid Hollywood screenwriter at the time, Estera's was also inspired to reclaim such a title after he learned that Shane Black had sold his script for The Last Boy Scout for $1.75 million. In response, Estera's hastily pounded out Basic Instinct screenplay in only 10 to 13 days. Under the title Love Hurts.
You shouldn't play this game.
Why not? I like it.
You're in over your head.
Estera's claims he began without an outline and listened to the Rolling Stones continuously while writing, and changed the title to Basic Instinct after thinking it up en route to FedEx to deliver the script to his agent. The script sparked a hotly contested bidding war among various production companies. It was sold at an auction 3 days later, with Carolco Pictures agreeing to pay $3 million, an unheard of sum at the time. Once Carolco agreed to make the picture, Estera's and producer Irwin Winkler wanted Milos Forman to direct. Although Forman was sent the script while on vacation and liked it enough to accept the job, by the time he responded, the Flying Dutchman Paul Verhoeven had already been hired.
I wouldn't know about that. I don't have any money, I don't have any attorneys, and Gus is my only real friend.
Remember, Carolco and Verhoeven had already delivered the badass sci-fi hit Total Recall in 1990. Yet, once Verhoeven joined the project, he immediately took issue with several aspects of the screenplay and wanted to make it even sexier, more transgressive, and risque.
What are you doing? Checking up on me?
One of the biggest arguments between the writer and director included Verhoeven's insistence on a lesbian sex scene,
Honey, I thought I'd seen everything before.
which Estera's deemed to be too gratuitous and exploitative, and he staunchly disagreed. When Verhoeven stood his ground and vowed to keep the scene, Estera's and Winkler flat out left the production and never returned. While this sapphic sexual scenario would have been between Catherine and her girlfriend Roxy, it's worth noting up front that the role of San Francisco homicide inspector Nick Curran was originally written to be a lesbian female detective.
She's coming after me, Gus.
At the time, Kathleen Turner was envisioned for the role. Not only would steamy sex scenes between Turner and Stone be hotter than sin, but the fantasy casting is also a bit ironic, considering that Stone referred to Turner's seductive femme fatale in Body Heat. Although Verhoeven recruited Total Recall scribe Gary Goldman to do 4 or 5 script rewrites at Douglas's request, they became worse and worse as they went on, to the point that they reverted to Astura's original script. Despite the efforts, only a few alterations to the staging and dialogue were made. Even so, Douglas still had issues with the screenplay and left to make a movie called Shining Through in Germany. When he returned and found the script had reverted to Astura's original idea, Douglas became even angrier. Once Nick Curran's role was rewritten as a much younger, bisexual man, several big-name Hollywood actors were concerned about the stigma attached and passed on the part. However, Michael Douglas, who many still consider far too old to play the role, agreed to star in Basic Instinct under several conditions.
You tell me, you're the shrink.
First, Carolco had to meet Douglas's $14 million salary. Once the company decided to pay the exorbitant fee, Douglas then demanded several script changes to make his character appear less wimpy. At the time, Douglas claimed he was interested in making an overtly erotic thriller because the genre was dying in the wake of the AIDS epidemic, and he wanted to restore the sensual luster of Hollywood sex scenes. Yet, Douglas refused to do full frontal nudity, as the script called for, as he had an ironclad no nudity clause in his contract.
What is this, some kind of joke?
He also wore lifts in the film to make him appear taller, opposite the statuesque Sharron Stone, and stranger yet, Douglas refused to play a bisexual character and had the script altered to make him straight. In even more diva-ish behavior, Douglas refused to give Stone top billing despite her being the true lead of the film, which legendary actress Faye Dunaway publicly shamed him for. Stone, who risked her reputation to play such a controversial character, was also paid a paltry $500,000 for her powerful performance, a mere fraction of what Douglas earned for what amounts to a co-starring role. Douglas, already a respected Oscar winner firmly established in Hollywood, would not allow Stone to shine brighter than him in Basic Instinct, one of many issues that made the two stars difficult to work together. Stone told Playboy that she was never comfortable working with Douglas, but that awkward energy actually suited the characters quite well. It's also worth noting that Stone, one of the most intelligent actors in Hollywood who famously has an IQ of 154, was seriously considering quitting acting to pursue a law degree before being offered the breakout role in Basic Instinct.
I lose everybody. I don't want to lose you.
Although Douglas was initially opposed to and upset with Sharron Stone's casting because she was not a big enough name, Verhoeven knew that she was the right actor to play Catherine following her screen test and based on their time working on Total Recall. Verhoeven was especially taken with how quickly Stone was able to emote from hateful to loving within seconds before her death in Total Recall.
After all, we're married.
Yet before she won the role, Douglas had suggested Kim Basinger, Julia Roberts, Greta Scacchi, and Meg Ryan, all of whom declined due to the graphic sex scenes. Additional actresses who turned down the role due to the salacious nudity included Michelle Pfeiffer, Demi Moore, Gina Davis, Farrah Fawcett, Kathleen Turner, Kelly Lynch, Ellen Barkin, Mariel Hemingway, and Deborah Winger. Only after all the first 12 actresses declined did Douglas agree to test with Stone. It took roughly 3 months for Verhoeven to convince Douglas and the producers that she was right for the role. And looking back, it's impossible to imagine anybody else playing that part.
Yes, it does, doesn't it?
Once the rest of the cast was set, Basic Instinct began principal photography on April 5th, 1991, and wrapped on June 28th that same year. Verhoeven hired his old pal Jean de Bont as the cinematographer, marking their 7th collaboration. Stacked with a $49 million budget, the vast majority of the film was shot in anamorphic Panavision on location in and around San Francisco. With shades of Vertigo, Verhoeven always intended to channel a classic Hitchcockian thriller in a modern studio system, replete with the graphic sexual sleaze and carnal debauchery that the master of suspense wasn't afforded during most of his career.
I shouldn't have let her watch us.
Verhoeven also called his 1983 psycho thriller, The Fourth Man, a spiritual predecessor to Basic Instinct. Filming took place in iconic San Francisco landmarks like Pacific Heights, Telegraph Hill, Chinatown, Pier 7, the Embarcadero, Golden Gate Park, Market Street, and more. However, when the screenplay leaked, and the gay and lesbian rights community took umbrage with how the gay and bisexual characters were portrayed in the film, picketers showed up at nearly every San Francisco location to boycott the movie's release. The SFPD had to dispatch 50 riot police officers to every location throughout the shoot.
Killing isn't like smoking. You can quit.
Meanwhile, Catherine's waterfront mansion, which is presumed to be located at Stinson Beach in the story, was filmed about 120 miles south of San Francisco on 157 Spindrift Road in Carmel by the Sea. Alright, so let's end the mystery up front. The opening scene of Basic Instinct, talking about Catherine's seductive power move while being interrogated for murder. At around 27 minutes, Catherine uncrosses her legs and reveals that she is not wearing underwear, which disarms the room and melts D.A. Corelli on the spot. First off, this was not in Estura's original script. It was an idea Verhoeven came up with during filming, which he based on an incident that happened to him in college when a woman tried to embarrass him at a party. As a quick aside, Steven Spielberg was so taken with Wayne Knight's sweaty performance as D.A. Corelli that he sat through the credits at the end of the film just to figure out the actor's name, knowing deep down that he was perfect to play Dennis Nedry in Jurassic Park. That is so awesome. But back to Stone's gams. Not to wade too deep into the contentious he said, she said that has persisted for decades, but Stone has maintained that she never knew about or agreed to do the infamous nude crotch shot before or during filming. Stone claimed that Verhoeven promised that, although she would remove her underwear for the scene, her bare genitals would not be shown on screen due to the bright lights and convenient camera angle. When Stone's agents saw a preview of the nudity, they voiced that it could harm her budding Hollywood career, and she actively sought to have the shot removed. Verhoeven refused to agree and kept the scene intact. Stone also admitted when she saw the film in a test preview that she was so angry that Verhoeven kept the compromising shot in the movie that she abruptly slapped him across the face. However, Verhoeven has denied this many times. To her credit, Sharron Stone has always stated that the director was right to keep that shot in the movie, but that she wished he had allowed her to make the decision for herself. And who could blame her? Regardless of the mutual consent beforehand, Catherine's power play will live forever in infamy.
You want me to take a lie detector test?
Surely the object of countless teenage male desires, horny bachelors, married men, and women alike, Catherine's carnal display of psychosexual control has often been named as the most famous Hollywood nude scene. And it has to be among the most paused cinematic moments in home video history.
That's why she killed herself.
Of course, another steamy imbroglio arrives roughly 10 minutes later when Nick and Beth, played by Jean Tripplehorn in her film debut, have kinky, borderline inappropriate sex in his apartment. Verhoeven secretly filmed the scene without Douglas or Tripplehorn noticing. With the two actors believing they were in rehearsal, Verhoeven was impressed by how natural and effortless the performances were and kept the take in the final cut. Not long after visiting Boz's nightclub, which was built on a Warner Bros. Set, Roxy pursues Nick in a car chase. Michael Douglas performed his own driving stunts while filming the scene. A former race car driver in real life, Douglas prepared for the sequence by driving up the Kearny Street stairs for 4 consecutive nights. It sounds like his early days playing a detective on the streets of San Francisco in the 70s paid off. As for the movie's very memorable music, legendary composer Jerry Goldsmith arranged the score. Despite having over 300 credits, Goldsmith said that Basic Instinct is probably the trickiest score he ever worked on, due to the deceptive nature of the story, and he credited Verhoeven for pushing him creatively. Not only did Goldsmith call it one of the best scores he's ever composed, but it also earned him one of 18 Oscar nominations in his decorated career. Once filming wrapped and the editing process was completed, the film initially received an NC-17 rating from the MPAA. The ratings board demanded cuts of the excessive violence and extreme sexuality to secure an R rating. Fortunately, Verhoeven shot a massive amount of footage for each sex scene and only needed to cut 35 to 40 seconds from the original to accommodate the MPAA.
What's this?
decided to give you a second chance.
Verhoeven claims that he didn't actually remove anything significant, but he chose different camera angles to create a less direct and more elliptical effect. Ultimately, it took 14 different edits to get it to an R rating. The biggest differences between the R-rated cut and the original NC-17 version included a much gnarlier and nastier opening death scene of Johnny Boz. The hardcore version shows Catherine brutally stabbing Boz on the neck, chest, and through the nose while having violent sex with him. The second edit pertained to Nick's odious rape of Beth, which is all but hinted at in the theatrical version, but the scene originally entailed Nick forcibly ripping off Beth's clothes, bending her over the sofa, and continuing to violate her after she repeatedly says no. Triplehorn has stated that she anticipated the guttural sex scene being much lighter than it turned out, but knew something darker and more disturbing was afoot when she saw Verhoeven's new storyboards on the day of shooting. She also claims the scene went well enough, save for bashing her head on the wall several times, leaving a big bump. The third scene that was tamed down for the R rating was Nick and Catherine's post-disco sex scene, which was longer and much more explicit. All three of these scenes were reinserted into the director's cut and released to home video, so if you want to know what they're like, you can watch them. And speaking of releases, Basic Instinct had an unconventional theater exhibition. The film opened in the US on March 20th, 1992, and instantly became the #1 movie at the box office. 2 months later, the film opened up at the Cannes Film Festival before being released worldwide in May. Although the film cost roughly $50 million to make, it grossed over 7 times its budget, totaling $353 million worldwide. Not only was Basic Instinct the highest grossing movie of the year in Italy, the UK, France, Germany, Iceland, Ireland, and South Africa, but it also became the highest grossing movie of all time in Spain. The film overcame its controversial stigma to become one of the most indelible erotic thrillers of all time. Of course, the same cannot be said for the lame 2006 Basic Instinct 2, which, despite Stone's magnetic performance, was an utter commercial flop. In deciphering what the happened to Basic Instinct, the biggest takeaway is that the movie overcame a slew of production snags to become arguably the most successful erotic thriller of the 90s. Between the controversy swirling around the production before it was made and after its release, and the irreconcilable differences between the key talent involved, the film still holds up nearly 35 years later as the definitive example of a subgenre that, until the recent release of The Housemaid, has become a dying breed. For all the indignities she suffered through giving her breakout performance, Sharron Stone is and always will be the brave, badass boss behind Basic Instinct's bravado.
What are you, a pro?
No, I'm an amateur.
Thank you for clicking on our video, everybody. If you like what you saw here, please make sure you like the video and subscribe and share with your friends who like this sort of content. JoBlo was created by movie fans for movie fans, and we appreciate your support.